Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kent City Council Workshop. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd. So we have one item on our agenda today, one long item, but I know they're going to work miracles for us today. Transportation Sustainability Update. And we have Chad, the Director of Public Works. Public Works.
Brenda can tell you.
All right. Chad, all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President, Council, Mayor, special guest today, Mayor. Semi-annual, I know we had an update last year on transportation sustainability. I like to come every year and talk about transportation sustainability. One thing for folks to note, I did a quick little back of the envelope calculation. If we had to start over and meet our street standards with our street system from scratch, we'd be paying over $4 billion to put the street network in.
Wow.
Even in its current configuration, we're well in excess of $2 billion as a city asset for the streets themselves, let alone our sewer and water underneath it. So really one of our largest assets, a very important piece of our infrastructure, something that I know as council members you hear a lot about when it's time for a snowstorm or potholes or things like that. But really today is the Bill Thomas and Rob Brown show. We want to give them a chance to talk about what they and their crews do to keep the system up and running. And we'll start with Bill Thomas, our street manager.
All right. Thank you, Council President, Council members, Mayor Roth. I'm here to talk a little bit about, a lot about what we do and what we've done. And as soon as I figure out how this thing goes, there we go. We'll start off the presentation with Meeker Street, the Meet Me on Meeker section between Russell Road and the GRE. As you can see on the left there, that was a single wide sidewalk with trees, not very accommodating for bikes or pedestrians or anything right there. So as you can see, we improved that area between those two areas there. We got a grant for $1.5 million for that. And that covered about 86.5% of that total project. And we just got the lights put in early this year to complete that project. Another big project we did last year was 212th Street between 72nd and 84th. And the grant covered about 86.5% of that as well. And that was a $2.1 million grant. So grants pay for a lot of work around here. So another opportunity we had was Lake Fenwick Road, a chip seal project. This is about, 1/3 the cost of an overlay, and we were able to double chip this. He put a lot of oil down, gravel it, then oil it again and gravel it again, and that creates a surface that extends the life of the pavement at least another 7 years. So that total project cost on that was $160,000. So compared to the 212th Street, you can see the big difference in that. Some of the projects we did in the residential areas, this is up on Scenic Hill, this is Renton Road, Maple Street, Woodland Way. You can see the before picture. We had a lot of crack sealing up there. The after photos, I'm sure you've all been on those roads up there right now. You can also see on East Maple Street over the lower left there, we actually installed some speed cushions there as well and some raised crosswalks throughout the project. 84th Avenue South, we did some patchwork there. We didn't have quite enough money to do a full overlay in there. We're still waiting for additional funding for that, so we've completed a lot of patchworks in there. I know our crews spent a lot of time filling potholes in there, so this was a real blessing over this last winter for us. 208th Street, didn't quite have enough time last year to do it, but as you know now, it's been already paved up there, and that's complete. Outside of some lines, I think, is what's left up there. So, some of our paving by city staff, I'm going to run through these real quick. We did some on 64th Avenue, 228th Street, 72nd Avenue, 124th was a big one for us up there. As you can see. This is a map from 2013 to 2021 of all the work that we've done. It's been cordoned out by funding source as well as in-house and contract work as well. So if you get a chance to look at this later, please do so. Our big project this coming year is going to be South 212th Street. It's going to be from the Green River to the West City limits there, or Aurelia Road. The total length is about a mile. The estimated cost is about $3 million. We've got $1.5 million in a grant for that, so it's covering literally half of that project. It'll be paid for by grants. This is our 2022 work plan. You can see that we've shotgunned it between the in-house and contract. It's mainly on the East Hill. It's got a lot of work up there. We got some valley work and a couple of spots on the West Hill as well. So some of the work we're going to do in-house is on 200th Street. That's just west of the Benson there, 108th. And we're going to do some dig-out patching, and hopefully next year we'll get a chip seal on this road as well to complete the project. 256th Street, as you know, a few of you know, this is a pretty rough ride. It took quite a beating this past winter. This year we're going to be grinding out that lane and repaving it so it'll be smooth again. And hopefully we won't get any more potholes further on from that.
That's my backyard.
As I said, we had some work we were doing on the West Hill. These are the shoulders along Military Road. Military Road itself is a concrete road. It's been there for well over 50 years and plus, but the road, the size of the road is material combining like gravel all the way to asphalt. And right now the two aren't conducive to each other and they're creating potholes all over the place. So our crews will go in and grind all that out in there and put a fresh shoulder down that thing, so it'd be great for both bikes, walkers, as well as an emergency lane for people to pull over. We're doing some industrial roads down here on 85th Place. This is right off at 228 behind the bowling alley, Denny's back here. These roads have been long and asking for some help down here, so we're giving it to them this year. Other areas that were affected by the winter was 132nd, several locations from 240th all the way down to Kankang. And that was our severe winter we had. It just delaminated a bunch of areas. A friend of mine told me that it looked like a truckload of potholes showed up and dumped them right there.
Yeah.
So moving on, we have about 314 center lane miles of road. That equates to about 727 lane miles. So each road goes from 2 lanes up to possibly 7 lanes. So that's how you get the larger number below. Our overlay funding annually is $4 million to $6 million. That's not counting grants. We also have, as you can see, we can't do all the work at once, so we're deferring off about $300 million worth of work annually. So some of the future projects we have is some overlays on 196. That's from the UP Spur Track on the west all the way to West Valley Highway, leaving out the bridge, of course. That's all concrete there. 277th is on our list as well. This road is approaching, almost 20 years now. And right now it's a good candidate for a chip seal. So again, we're looking at cost reducing ways to gain life out of our roadways. So. This is Central Avenue. Others call it 84th Avenue. It's between 167 and James Street. Looking for that to be added soon. 212th and 84th Avenue. This is one of the largest intersections we have in the city. It's in pretty bad shape. We're going to try to include this with our overlay on 84th from 196 through this intersection. But right now we're just waiting on funds to identify for this project. In the meantime, we'll probably be doing some patchwork in the crosswalk areas where there's pedestrian access there. So let's get to the classifications of roads. Principal arterial streets are life cycles approximately 12 to 15 years. Some cases they go a little longer. You can see here 212th Street and Pack Highway. Those are both considered principal arterials. Minor arterial streets, the approximate life cycle of those is 15 years in length. Again, some of them go a little longer than they should. You can see the streets that are 132nd, Military Road, Reith Road, and West Meeker Street. Residential collectors go for about 15 to 20 years of a lifespan, and those are roads like 124th, you can see here at 264th, and also up above there at 202nd and 124th. And then we have residential streets. Life cycle is minimum, in my case, 25 years. Okay, some of them we've overlaid and they've been in there for like 40 years. So it just depends on the traffic amount of traffic that's on them. You can see we have one here in Randall Park on the West Hill and a newly paved one up there in Seven Oaks area there. So pavement condition index, that's how we rate our roads. So that's most commonly known as a PCI. And that's a rating that goes from 0, which is like gravel, unconfined gravel, to 100%, which is a newly overlaid. Okay, this is on 64th Avenue, and this is what we would call fairly excellent, right, in the excellent category, because it's newly paved, all the markings are intact, and it's fairly not even discolored. So the next one is the same road, 64th Avenue, but down towards the school and the postal distribution plant there. So that's the next range. 70 to 84 is good. Okay, and here you can tell we're starting to get a crack in here. That's ready for a crack sealing job, but the lines are all intact, the legends are all intact. It's in fairly good shape. And this is 64th again, at West Smith. Now this one we're getting into more cracks. You can start seeing utility cuts coming through the overlay. You can see transitional cracks, which goes side to side of the road, and we got a little bit of alligator cracking on the side. This is a fair range, 55 to 69. All three of those areas, these roads are in fairly decent shape to drive on. Okay, yeah, they need some work. We may have a pothole or two here and there. This next one is the last one. This is on 64th as well. This is just south of 212th. This is considered below 54. I would even consider it probably in the 30s. This is where you'll actually have to go and dig out the whole area there and rehab that street, where it's beyond just an overlay. So if you want to put a graph on all these numbers I just gave you, 28% of our roads is in poor shape. Okay, but remember when I said group those three together, we're about 72% of roads that are really in good shape to drive on. Basically, it's in the good, it's in the fair is where we need to just start doing overlays and things like that. So
really, that's kind of like 50-50, really, I would think, when you bucket that.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So here on this map here I showed you, we knocked off the good and the excellent just to show you the fair and the poor. So the poor roads are all in red and the fair roads are in orange. And you can see that sooner or later those orange roads are going to start going into the red. Okay, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even next year, but soon enough. So that's why we rate our roads as often as we can so we can stay up on top of that. So potholes, causes of potholes is just, some of the causes is excessive moisture in the subbase, or subgrade, insufficient pavement thickness. Some of our roads are only 2 inches, and some of the annexed areas we have is like less than 2 inches. So, we fill a pothole, it's like that deep before you get gravel. Freeze thaw causes potholes and constant traffic loading. Okay, so how do potholes form? And I know most of you have seen this before, but it's really a good illustration. Is a good to excellent road, the drainage runs off the road into the gutters down the system. Mm-hmm. When you start getting into the fair, you start getting cracks. Water finds those cracks is the easiest way through the thing. They end up going into the subbase, and then start to soften the subbase, and more traffic pounding creates more cracks, and then eventually you're going to have a pothole. And if you have a pothole this big during a rainstorm, it can grow to 2 to 3 feet in a matter of a couple hours. So that's how drastic some of these can get. So this is a little different map than the last map you all saw. The last one had lines and greens and yellows and stuff on it. This one here is when they were going out and fill a pothole, they're able to mark it with our new system now and just mark that road exactly where they'll drop a pin. And that's what this map is. So yellow is one time, and all the way down to a red or a dark orange that's up to 30 potholes. So you can pretty much see 132nd is where we got most of the problems, and 256. So with that, we filled over 2,700 potholes since October 1st to April 1st of this year. And in comparison to that, October 1st of 2020 to April 1st of 21 of last year, we only filled 900. So you can see this is 3 times the amount of potholes that we got over the last year. So winter wet road damages. So it's not only, the freeze and thaw, it's water over the roadway. Now this is 148th, right down there by 256. It's constantly underwater because of the lowness of the road, the low elevation of the road, and the high water table. So that is saturated base all the time. So we want to leave the vehicles off of that as long as possible, otherwise it starts destroying the road as we go.
Is 148, that's, I know, once you cross Sioux Creek Bridge, and then you make that left for 148, so that still Kent?
Yes,
down
the
there.
whole road is Kent all the way, even
Okay.
the loop back to 240th is.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we close that road quite frequently, right? So here's the big one over here on 248. This road was in kind of the lower end of the fair range, had some cracks, alligator cracking, and it was ready to go into the poor section. But it didn't make it through this winter because, first of all, we had a lot of rain, then we had a big snowstorm, and then we had freeze. It froze long enough where it froze under the surface and froze all that moisture under there. And when it thawed out, all the vehicles started punching it. And we call this in the industry a frost boil. In essence, all the mud and stuff boils up out of the pavement at that point. We had emergency repairs on that, and it took care of it. It's fine now. So a little bit about the concrete roads. Not going to labor this too long. In the past, we've identified numerous industrial roads in the valley that if we were to rehab the roads, that we'd consider concrete. Okay. However, concrete costs 35% more initially to install. However, you get up to a 50-year life cycle out of concrete. But here's a good example in the lower left. That was about 4 years ago. We put concrete in from 196 south for about 4 blocks, or 6 blocks actually, and that was about just over $1 million, right, for that section. Well, we had to end it there because we were out of money. But you can see the asphalt, up to that point, it's destroyed. So anytime we consider doing any kind of rehab, we have to consider, is it feasible to do concrete at this point? So if there's funding available, we'll do concrete.
The intersection between, I think, say 212th and 84th, right?
12th and 84th?
Yeah, there's going to be concrete there?
Well, we're still in debate about that.
Okay.
It's a lot of money, and that'd be like a whole year's budget just to do that intersection, so virtually.
Okay.
So, but we're trying to combine that with the rest of that 84th Avenue all the way to 196. So.
I'm sorry. So the transportation bill that was just passed, right? So can't get some of that money, right? Is it peanut butter spread out, or how did that work with helping us with some of this work here?
Yeah, we were given money in the transportation bill, but it was for specific projects. So we got money for the 224th project going up the hill the rest of the way from 94th to 108th along 216th and 218th, and then we got money for Meeker, and then money for the quiet zone, but we didn't get money for maintenance.
But the transportation bill just got passed in Olympic, did it? I thought they were just going to give us every city get X amount of dollars. It's specified for a certain project?
It was specified for certain projects in Kent, and we did very well.
Yeah.
Many cities didn't get anything.
Right. Okay.
So the other money that we've been getting for preservation is through the PSRC, the federal funding.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. We used to have a whole graph of weights and cars and things like that, but we just compared this. We got buses, trucks, garbage trucks. We combine them into one large truck, right? And we average it out all the weights. And even one large truck pass on a road equals 7,000 cars. So you can tell trucks and heavy vehicles like that take a toll on our roads. So moving on to the non-motorized portion of it, we're getting close here. We inspect our sidewalks, every 12 to 16 months, and we have a cycle of about 300 miles of sidewalks that we cover. And that little iPad he's got or a tablet he's got, he's able to identify a spot right on out there in the field, put a pin similar to the potholes, but on this one he can actually tell you exactly what it is, take a picture of it, drop a pin, and then off to the next one he goes. Very, very little handwriting stuff. He just takes it back into the shop when he's done at the end of the day, downloads it in a computer, and it puts it off onto into our inventory. So part of the inventorying we do is we segregate these out. The valley area here is primarily where our street trees are, and things like that in the core area along our main arterials and things like that. So we're actually trying to get those in at least once a year to make sure that we're getting every defect we see and mitigating any defect we see. So you can see the main corridors, there's one on the west hill as well as on the east hill. Those are the high pedestrian areas there that we're trying to watch out for. This other one is actually residential areas, okay? These are all the defects in the sidewalks in the neighborhoods. And there's quite a few of them, and we try to mitigate when we can, and we just want to make sure that we're catching everything we see out there. So to mitigating defects, we eliminating uneven surfaces by grinding, okay? We like to do that obviously on a wet day, because that concrete dust can create quite a problem, but on wet days it's no problem, and we grind the surface of the lips so they're flat. If they're too big, we shim them with asphalt to kind of transition a little bit. Sidewalk barriers and vegetation encroachment, these are very common in residential areas. You got basketball hoops sitting on sidewalks, people parking on the sidewalks. We even have vegetation that encroaches over the sidewalk. Good example of that is over on the far left there. The resident was notified that they need to clean up their yard a little bit. Came back a week later and it's all cleaned up. Looks great. From the industrial area down below, couldn't find the owner of that one, so our crews went in and took care of that and eliminated another barrier. So. Downtown core needs approximately 5 miles of sidewalks need upgrades, and that's not just broken and lifted sidewalks, that's ADA non-compliant. Okay, that's driveways that are at the wrong slopes. I think Rob's going to talk a little more about that, so I won't belabor that too much. But I remember 35 years ago, I was in here taking panels out because they were lifted by those sweet gum trees that were out there. Well, they replaced the trees, and now we have like tree boxes and stuff that are getting uneven. So we'll be back at that again. So 35 years, and we're still not out of the core. But, sidewalk improvements. Like I said earlier, we have over 300 miles of sidewalk in Kent. And our crews repair or replace about a half mile to a mile annually. Okay, and here's one of those on the far left. You can see we shimmed that sidewalk. It was just too big to grind. So, but the one above that is 64th Avenue. It was all broken up and lifted by the tree roots. We took it out and we put in a new sidewalk there. I was talking about that database that they got when they inventory. This is what it looks like when you run a report. The green is all the work that they've accomplished and completed and fixed. The orange are what that are still in the database that need to be looked at and fixed if we can. And the blue areas, as you can see, where we're actually going to be scheduling our work for this year. And this is a separate crew from the crew that does the sidewalk replacement. So filling sidewalk gaps and adding sidewalks. Well, over the past several years, we've added sidewalks, primarily over to Reith Road on the west side. It was just a trail going up that side. We connected it all the way from Lake Fenwick Road up to 253rd. In the last couple of years, we were connecting a sidewalk on 260th/259th Place from 27th up to the apartments there just before I-5. That part was the part that we finished first. And then the next two phases was on the east side of I-5 to Military Road. We completed that section this last December. And it's complete with lighting and conduits, and it just makes it a little bit brighter in there during the nighttime. And Sound Transit still has a section under I-5 that they need to complete. Hopefully that'll be done, I don't know, the end of this year, probably into next year. But by that time, everything will be a continuous strand all the way from Pack Highway to Military Road. So, and to add to all this, we have over 175 miles of missing sidewalk at a cost, this is, before COVID was 127 million. So who knows what it is now with the inflation of the costs and stuff. So 127 million is nothing, it's a lot of money. So obviously we can't fill everything. So just to give you an idea, over the last 8 years, our crews have rehabbed and replaced and put in new sidewalks in all these areas you see on the map. They've done a great job. So I'll tell you about the missing sidewalks. This is a map of all the missing sidewalks that are in Kent right now. So a lot of these you can see are on unimproved roads such as 256 or 132nd, but most of them are inside residential areas, the older residential areas where they just did not include sidewalks in their development. So But when we're rehabbing roads, we obviously look for ways to add sidewalks or pedestrian access along our projects. And to do that, we go through a complete streets process to where they're able to either agree or disagree and just move ahead or not do the job yet, basically is what it is. So,
Quick question from the mayor, please.
yes.
Bill, question for you on the concrete. Are we seeing any of the impacts of sort of the hangover from the concrete strike? I know Sound Transit was there. Significant delays are talking 4 or 5 months to get sort of everything back up and running. And I know that has to do a lot with the other trades that they have on site. But I'm wondering just on the amount of concrete that the region is behind, is that going to impact our ability to do this work over the summer?
Actually, the two groups that we used weren't part of the strike, per se. We were able to secure a weekly, regularly scheduled pour day.
Oh, good.
Which helped to nail down a carrier for our concrete. And I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And we were able to get concrete every Wednesday.
Okay.
To be able to pour more sidewalk and repair more sidewalks. So there was an increase in cost for fuel that they attached to each load because of the fuel costs. But basically, we really didn't see too much of an interruption.
On the fuel increase side, are we seeing that in our asphalt bids too?
Yes.
The cost of,
Yes, we are.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to some of our capital projects quickly here. With crack sealing, we talked about, on the fair roads, we want to get those cracks all sealed up. That's $300,000 a year. And these are the areas that we're doing, primarily in the valley. We got some West Hill areas that we're taking care of in the residential area. Line striping and raised pavement markings. Most of this work is done at night because of the traffic and less tracking of the paint and a little bit safer for our RPM guys when they're laying out those pavement. I don't know if you can see it in that picture there or not, but that guy's hanging out underneath the truck, putting those buttons down on the road. So a total annual cost of that's about $350,000. And here's the map that we use annually to bid our work on. And you can see it's all green. Those are done once, and then there's a touch-up again at the end of the year or by the end of summer. You can see the dark lines there. That's where all our work is happening this year. So they know to not paint those until the end of the season. So we're not ripping up fresh paint with our new asphalt. So plastic markings, the annual cost for that is about $500,000. Life expectancy for these markings is about 5 years because they're on the road. Vehicles are running over them all the time, and they just fade away. So these are the areas that we have slated for a contract this year. As you can see, it's primarily for the whole city. A lot of intersections are being addressed. Guardrails. This is one of my favorites. We spend about $150,000 upwards, and sometimes beyond that, to repair guardrails annually. As you can see, here's a couple of examples. One on Reith Road. There's an errant driver went through. You can see we had it repaired within a month. 218th and 88th, I thought we'd get away from that, but apparently somebody was out there in their Maserati and thought they'd go quite fast. Well, they didn't make that corner and knocked out that. Fortunately, they had insurance, so we're going to get the total cost of replacement of that covered. So,
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill, when an accident takes place and a guardrail's wiped out, do you guys does the city go after the insurance company too to help pay for that?
Yes, if they primarily we contact their insurance company, but a good portion of them do not have insurance at that point. And then we just have to send them the bill and then go through the process at that point. And sometimes we're fortunate to get payments, and other times we're not. So, but this is a good one that we actually got an insurance company.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Signs and markings, pavement markings, signs tend to wear out, okay? We have about 20,000 signs in our inventory, maybe a little more, don't quite know yet. They have a lifespan of about 12 years depending on which way they're facing, right? If it's in the sun, they're gonna fade a lot sooner. We spend about $500,000 a year replacing signs, okay? That's a retroreflectivity portion of this. And of course, we have a lot of maintenance and cleaning. So over the last 4 years, we've installed just over 3,800 new signs that replace the old faded ones. You can see the middle picture there. You're not seeing double. That is the old sign behind it. And when we put in a new sign, we put in a base first, and then we're ready. So you have to let that concrete set. We put a new post in, and then we'll remove the old one. But that, you can see the stark difference in that between a wore-out sign and well beyond its use. So we fabricate all our own street name signs, and it takes about 30 minutes to fabricate just a nameplate for a road. So they do quite well when they're doing those things. We have almost 800 signs that are projected to replace this year. So that's not counting all the work orders that Mr. Brown gives us to do as well. So, oh boy, as you can see, and I'm almost done here. As you can see, this is our work plan that we've had over the last 5 years. We started on the south end, obviously, and we're working towards the north to try to capture all these within 12 to 15 years and have all our signs replaced at that point. So as you can see, we're finished up on the west hill and a little bit on the east hill, a little bit on the east hill this year. And our overhead signs. I don't know if you've noticed the new overhead signs or not. I mean, they're built for people that, like me, that need to see better, especially at night. They're huge. We're on our last leg of that. So we've already completed 4, maybe now 5 intersections as of this year. We're concentrating the rest on Kent County Road. They're starting at 104th all the way out to the 152nd out there. So those are the last bits of intersections that we have to do. Bridges. We have 21 bridges in our inventory, and our annual maintenance cost is about $150,000. We use some minor repairs that we can do in-house, but the majority of that money goes towards our inspections. Okay, we have to have our bridge inspected at least every 24 to 48 months, depending on what type of bridge it is. This is the most expensive part here is this truck that they use. It's an under-bridge inspection truck, a U-bit, okay? It's an articulating boom that actually goes out, over, and underneath the bridge, and as you can see, it gets them under there so they can inspect the superstructure of the bridge. This is 196th Avenue, or 196th Street Bridge. So you've seen this map before. It shows you all the bridges we have. We have a couple of co-owned bridges, one with county and one with Tukwila. Meeker Street Bridge, this is a big one I want to talk about really shortly, okay? Meeker Street Bridge, the last major work we did on that was in 1994, and I got a paint job then, okay? We have an opportunity to get a paint job and a deck repair this in. We applied for a few grants. We received 2 of them, a $3 million grant for painting and almost $1.5 million for deck repairs. Okay, that's $4.5 million, and it's very expensive work because obviously they have to encapsulate the bridge, any kind of work they do, because they don't want any of it falling into the rivers, into the creeks, into the insensitive areas. So to top this all up, there's no matching grant money to this. This is all money if we can get it spent by 2025. Okay, so that's really an excellent catch our guys took on that one. So great. So moving into right-of-way vegetation. We spend annually $360,000. This takes care of all the side mowings, the sidearm mowing, do the brunt of the work. But again, our 3-man crew that's on the ground, they take care of a lot of stuff here. So here's a good example. The upper left-hand corner, we got a complete street, basically. We got planted street trees, we got mow strips, we got a planted traffic island, and those guys do it all, okay? They do the James Street planter strips there, as well as the grass behind the sidewalk, pack highway islands, and we got this little triangle island at the Kinkangley Y there at 256. They're starting to get all these islands looking really good. So this is what the street vegetation group does. It's primarily 3 people. This doesn't count the sidearm mowers. They're out on all the unimproved roads. These guys are on all mostly improved areas. They do expand their crew to 5 to 7 people if needed, if there's a rush job to do, but primarily 3 people. And this is the work they do several times a year. So that's a lot of work these guys do. And finally, the street trees, okay? We spend $375,000 is what's in our budget annually, and that's for temporary help, that's for pruning contracts, to get the height of the trees up above the sidewalks and as well as in the streets, and to actually get them looking good. Occasionally, we'll be removing trees when they're being ornery to our sidewalks, and or they've outlived their usefulness, and they're starting to decay and wilt. So we'll remove those as well. We do have a plan to replace trees that have been knocked out. It's primarily over on Reith Road. I know we're going to look at possibly putting in a few trees in that area as well, but basically I think that's all I got. So,
Just a few things.
all right, just a few things.
Yeah, I think you said, it seemed like this year the road's a lot worse, and that's because the weather the last 8-7 years have not quite been as bad, or is it just coincident?
It's a combination. It's all those poor roads and the lower fair roads where they're just about going to poor. If you get the perfect weather, not so perfect weather, you get the rain, the freeze, the thaw, they just start delaminating and just flying all over the place. So.
Now you guys, there's a lot of work need to be done. So you can't start it until the weather get warm, I'm guessing, for us repairing the road. So you think?
We put in a temporary mix, as you can see. Some of them get a little higher than create bumps and whatever, but we can't really start until June 1st, just pulling out asphalt and replacing it. So.
And some of the roads, like the one on 256, do you grate those down to the ground, or are you just going to put overlay on top of those?
Yes, what they would do is we have a power grinder, a commercial grinder that comes in and we'll mill out that whole lane. Okay. And we'll put in a fresh 2.5 inches of asphalt on top.
Okay, thank you. Lots of job security for the summer, huh?
A lot of work.
No.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members, Mayor. Rob Brown, Transportation Engineering. I'm going to continue to talk about transportation sustainability on the traffic operations and traffic engineering side. Before I get started, though, I did want to touch on one of the things that Bill mentioned about the missing piece of sidewalk under I-5 on 259th Place in the area of the Sound Transit work. City successfully negotiated with Sound Transit to build that missing piece of sidewalk as part of their project, and so that should be done towards the end of next year. From my perspective, with the streetlights, even better. They're going to put the conduit in for us so that our crew can come back in later and finish those streetlights off and get that street completed. So looking forward to that. All right, so I will try and keep up the pace that Bill set. So we'll start with traffic safety. Unfortunately, we have about 2,600 crashes per year on the city streets. We're showing 2020 crash statistics because we typically get the data from Washington State Department of Transportation about this time every year. So I can almost guarantee you we'll get it by the end of this week, since the presentation's today. So we were seeing last year, we were seeing a downward trend in the number of reported crashes and non-injury crashes, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we continue that. Our serious and fatal injury crashes were up 2%, but that number, in the 50-ish range, one number can make a big change in the percent, but again, keep our fingers crossed that those are down. In 2020, we're also down on the pedestrian crashes and the bicycle-involved crashes. We've already talked about the 2020 grants, so we'll keep going. Local road safety plan. You heard about this a couple months ago from Eric Preston, our city traffic engineer. The local road safety plan is something that we need to put together now to qualify for safety grants from PSRC and from Washington State Department of Transportation. Some of the grants we can't even apply for without the plan, and some of them are a points type analysis where we get extra points for having the plan or don't get those points if we don't have it. So the local road safety plan is a data-based analysis. The federal government, along with a lot of different states and a lot of different experts, spent a long time coming up with empirical analysis methods for safety. Prior to this, it was just traffic engineers, just with experience. This is happening, we think we should do this. So we now have an empirical, scientific method for doing this. And what it does is it looks at the fatal and serious injury crashes over the previous 5 years and determines the hot spots. And so when we do this, done by our team, we come up with spot locations, which are typically intersections or, a high crash location, as well as systemic citywide locations. So And again, we update this about every 2 years to coincide with the grant schedules, which is the even years. And we'll move on to our residential traffic calming program. This was adopted in 2020 with an update earlier this year. Residential traffic calming program focuses on neighborhood livability. It's not specifically a safety program. Again, we have our local road safety plan that focuses primarily or specifically on that. This is a neighborhood livability program. It does focus on speeds. It's a points-based system. Speeds do provide the highest number of points. But it also considers things like, are there sidewalks on both sides of the street? Is it near a transit center or a school? We consider the traffic volumes. We also consider the crash history. 2021, for last calendar year, we received 33 requests. So far in 2022, we've already received 6. And we typically see those numbers go up when the sun starts coming out. So it could be as early as this month or next month. Those numbers typically go up in the summertime when people start getting outside. The budget for the residential traffic calming program is $150,000 a year. That covers traffic studies, public outreach, and the construction of those traffic calming devices. And this is funded through the B&O program. Just a quick map to show you the residential traffic calming requests and those different stages. I know this is really hard to read. Kent is a large city, but this shows the 141 requests we've received for the residential traffic calming program since 2018. So a big number there. Again, I apologize, it's difficult to see, but the couple of things I'd like to highlight are the green areas, those green lines. Those are streets and neighborhoods that have qualified for the residential traffic calming program. They've had their initial traffic studies and their follow-up traffic studies, and so we will be contacting those neighborhoods as we go forward to start talking about traffic calming and then going to voting. The blue lines, which there are a couple of them towards the center of the, up on the East Hill, those are locations that meet the initial traffic study, meets the initial requirements for the program, but we need to do a follow-up traffic study. The purple lines, which there are about 40 of those are ones where we've had the initial contact, but we are waiting for the neighborhood to gather the required 5 neighbors to support that. We're waiting for traffic studies that we are working on. And just a couple pictures of traffic calming. Upper left corner, this is 98th Avenue and 240th. This is over by East Hill Elementary School. These are speed cushions. They're kind of like speed bumps, but they've got the grooves in the middle. This is something we've worked out with the fire department. Having a speed bump or a speed hump, which is an elongated speed bump, slows down their response times, but especially with the fire trucks. Those are big, heavy vehicles. So these have the 2 grooves in it, so the fire truck can drive down the middle of the road without slowing down significantly. So it was we like the speed humps or the speed bumps, but we also like the fire truck to show up quickly. So this is a good compromise that we've come up with. This is by far our most commonly requested traffic calming device when we have our public meetings. Below that on the left side, traffic circle. This is probably our second most common requested. Again, typical traffic circles so that you have to slow down and kind of drive around the circle when you're traveling down the road.
So, Rob, when you guys get those, the people request, you got like 33, I think you say, so you got some process that you guys go through, you kind of analyze and...
Absolutely, yeah. So we receive the request. People can call us, send us emails. They can call Public Works. We've got a webpage. Even see ClickFix or KentWorks. Yeah, sorry, KentWorks. Online, they can reply those things. We reach out to them. We send them a flyer about the program. The program does require that they get themselves and 4 of their neighbors on their street or in their neighborhood to sign up for that, because what we've experienced in the past is 1 or 2 people want traffic calming and nobody else does, and so we go through the process and don't get the support. So by having 5, we figure that's a reasonable number for people to gather their support. So once they do that, then we go do our traffic studies. The program does require us to do a second study, so if it qualifies, we go back, we do another traffic study. So that's related to speeds. Sidewalks, proximity to schools, those points don't change, but the speeds do. The vast majority of those that meet the initial point total, when we do our follow-up study, they're confirmed. Very few of them don't. Then 2 more quick. Upper right, we're showing the radar speed signs, and lower right, we're showing raised crosswalks. So this is on Russell Road, right next to the shops at the Green River, but we're doing raised crosswalks also in the neighborhoods. And we'd like to do these near parks and on school walk routes and things like that. Enhanced crosswalks. This is I would consider this not only an enhancement for pedestrians, but also a traffic safety These are for locations that are mid-block crosswalks or unsignalized locations. And there are a couple different things. The upper right on Meeker Street, we've got the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. Those are something relatively new for the traffic engineers. They don't use the typical, one blink on, blink off type pattern. They have a rapid alternating flashing pattern. You've probably seen these in, like the 4th and Willis roundabout on Meeker Street. With this new type of device, this really gets people's attention. So this is one of those things that we really like for those mid-block crosswalks. We've also got one on the upper right side, same thing at 132nd Wilson Playfield. Center right, that is called a pedestrian hybrid beacon or a hawk signal. It's a type of traffic signal that's dark until pedestrian pushes the button and then the lights flash. And then the pedestrian crosses. So that's used more for higher volumes. This is West Valley at the Kent Regional Trail Connector project. So that's, at that point, it's 6 lanes wide and 50 miles an hour speed limit. So that needs something a little bit more than a flashing beacon to get people's attention. So we actually have an actuated traffic signal. Lower left, that is a school zone crosswalk on 116th at 256 for Meridian Middle School. And then again, we just talked about the 4th and Willis roundabout.
Hey, real quick, that top right, the one on 132nd, look like the centerpiece is no longer there. I think somebody
hit it.
Took it out.
Yes, unfortunately true. So we've ordered the parts. We're just waiting for those to come in.
Yeah.
Moving on to Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. ADA is something that's been in place since 1990. It's been a requirement for cities to have an ADA transition plan and inventory since 1992. So we're coming up on about 30 years there. So multiple steps. The first thing we need to do is inventory our existing system. And one of the things about ADA, Bill touched on, showed the maps of our missing sidewalks and the sidewalks that they are working on. But ADA is focused on the existing system. So it doesn't look at what's missing or what needs to be included from our perspective to build out our full sidewalk system. It only looks at the things that are there. And it is focused on improving those existing facilities to meet the ADA requirements. So the first thing we do is we need to do an inventory, and that includes all the non-motorized facilities. So that's the curb ramps, sidewalks, driveways, our traffic signal system, and the bus stops. And once we have our inventory in place, then we go through a public process to prioritize those improvements. And just the pictures here, this is First and Titus, just right over here at Titus Railroad Park. The before picture is a curb ramp that doesn't actually look too bad, but it is non-compliant in several issues. And then if you've driven by there lately, the Parks Department's redoing the park, and I believe they just poured the curb ramp this week, so that should be open pretty soon. Another couple pictures just right down the street here at Railroad Avenue and Titus Street, just across the tracks here. So you'll notice we had a crosswalk, but there's no curb ramps. So all projects that alter a crosswalk, which means basically go through a crosswalk. So in this case, this was a water main replacement project. It went down the street, went through the crosswalk. By federal law, it is actually required to bring that crossing up to ADA standards. So that project had to build the curb ramps and in those corners. And so great ADA improvement. We went from somewhere with no curb ramps to a fully compliant corner. So driveways, I suppose I should also mention, as part of our inventory process, we have already inventoried all of the existing curb ramps in the city of Kent. That was completed about 2 years ago, so we have an inventory of those. Currently working on the ADA inventory for the driveways in Kent. Another big task. There are many more driveways actually than there are curb ramps in the city. Showing a couple pictures here. These are just pictures I took walking around downtown a couple days ago. Some of these curb ramps don't look too bad, but none of these are actually compliant. And the big thing that gets us usually is the cross slope. So as you're walking down the sidewalk, the difference in elevation from your right side to your left side, that can only be 2%, which to put that in terms of feet, if you had a sidewalk that was 50 feet wide, it can only be 1 foot difference from one side to the other. So it is a very shallow sidewalk. And so these driveways that are part of the sidewalk system are not actually ADA compliant. Again, we're going through the inventory process. Once that's done, we'll then go through the public outreach process, and then we'll start focusing on those areas that the public thinks are most important. Sidewalks. Following the driveways, we'll have to inventory all the sidewalks. And again, Bill had a nice map showing all the missing sidewalks and damaged sidewalks. But when it comes to ADA, there are, again, ADA is very picky, very specific. Just some pictures here at the upper left corner. Sidewalk clear width needs to be at least 48 inches or 4 feet. So we've got some encroachment issues. Like Bill said, we can usually contact these neighbors and have these things taken care of. Lower left, some discontinuities. This is, a well-meaning, this is, in my neighborhood actually, a well-meaning neighbor, when it froze earlier this year, put ice melt out, shoveled the sidewalk, put some ice melt out. Unfortunately, older sidewalk, it refroze, and when it refroze hard, the top layer of the sidewalk popped, spalled. And so you're only allowed about a half an inch for ADA for a vertical discontinuity or a gap, something like that, which you can see in the two center pictures and those kind of things. When you get those gaps that are more than a half an inch, that's not ADA compliant.
I have a question. How do we prioritize when we take a look and we've done the inventory? We know we have all these projects to do.
Great question.
Do we have a use calculation on sidewalks, or how do we determine?
That's a great question, and that is, once we finish the inventory, that's something we're going to have to think about. But the first piece of that is the public input process, similar to what we did with the Transportation Master Plan, only on an actually larger scale. We will hold a bunch of public meetings, workshops, and things like that with the council, the public, business owners, a bunch of different people, because we need to get all of that input, and that will then tell us what our priorities are. And so we'll get those input. Do we want to focus on near elementary schools? Do we want to focus in the downtown core where we expect more people? Do we focus on transit routes so people can get to the bus stops? And so from that, we will probably come up with some kind of a large prioritization process and then go from there. And we'll look for the public input, but the things that we'll suggest people consider, are the number of pedestrians, proximity to senior facilities. That's another one. Mm-hmm. So those type of things. So.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilman, by the way, this light's not working, so just go ahead and talk. I can't see nothing, so just speak up.
And then just to finish this slide off, a couple of the things that we need to be looking at. Lower center, again, vegetation encroachment, those are things that we can easily take care of. But something that most of us probably don't think about related to ADA is the lower right, is the mailboxes. Having a mailbox blocking part of the sidewalk, if we don't have at least 4 feet around that mailbox, that's not ADA compliant. Traffic signals also have an ADA component. We have the push buttons. There are specific locations for where those push buttons need to be located. There are also specific requirements for those push buttons. You'll notice in the upper right corner, this is 104th and 264th, so this is right across the street from Kentucky Fried Chicken in the neighborhood of Target and Home Depot. The upper left corner, you'll see the old style. We call those mushroom buttons. They're just the black housing with a silver button in the middle of it. Those are not ADA compliant. Upper right picture and the lower picture, those are ADA compliant. They have specific buttons. They have locator tones for people that are visually impaired. They can hear those. They also have a directional arrow that points in the direction of the crosswalk so that somebody can hear it, come up and touch it, feel the direction of the arrow. And they've also got it's called a tactile feedback. You touch the button and it vibrates to let you know that the traffic signal's received your request to cross the street. And then most of us probably don't know this, but if you keep your hand on it, when the traffic signal changes, the button starts to vibrate. So if you're hearing impaired, you know when to start crossing the street. There's a couple statistics here I want to point out, but just real quick. So these buttons, we are working our way towards replacing all these buttons. I think at this point, we've replaced 62% of the buttons for the entire traffic signal system in Kent. They're about $2,500 a button to replace, and we have 14 intersections remaining. And we'll talk about these in just a second. And this is where ADA and pedestrian safety come together with the accessible pedestrian signals, which we just talked about, and something called leading pedestrian intervals. Leading pedestrian interval is, again, something relatively new in traffic operations where you let the pedestrian start walking or give the pedestrian the walk signal a few seconds before the cars get the walk signal. So in this case, the city of Kent, we use 4 seconds. It's within the range of, most people use 3 to 6 range. And so where we have these LPIs, leading pedestrian intervals, implemented, the walk signal will come on. Where we have the accessible pedestrian signals, it'll tell, say walk signals on, things like that. And what this does is this allows the pedestrian, all of us when we cross the street, to get a couple feet out into the crosswalk and start moving. And that does two things. One, it gets people into the crosswalk where cars have a better chance of seeing them. And the other thing it does is the pedestrian's already moving when the driver gets the green light. And humans are just attracted to motion. It's, you see a motion, you just automatically look at it. So great advancement in pedestrian safety, and we are implementing these in the city. So far, we've implemented them at 42 intersections of about 117 traffic signals we have in the city. And we have the materials and are scheduled to add 12 more this year. So,
Got a question from Councilmember Fincher.
I was just wondering if we've had any of them in place long enough to be able to collect data to see if there was actually a decrease in the number of pedestrian automobile accidents.
I'm going to say probably not. I think our oldest installations are coming up on 3 years old. So we could look at them to draw some general conclusions, but thankfully the number of pedestrian incidents in Kent is fairly low. So over time, I think we would see a downward trend, but I'm not sure that in just a couple of years we're going to see something noticeable. And when we're talking, 20, 30 type crashes a year, just the randomness of these things could skew the numbers significantly. But I think over time, and it is a proven technology, something that I am personally very excited about.
I could imagine that, because hopefully the drivers, it's going to catch their eye. My son's friend was hit that way.
Yes.
But I was hoping that we could see the numbers and actually see a considerable decrease.
It's something we'll take a look at, and I think that's probably something, so when we do our next local road safety plan in 2024, the oldest ones will be in for about 5 years, and so that's something we can take a look at and see if we're seeing some kind of a trend there. The technology and the implementation is proven nationwide, so they're in other locations, and many studies went into this before this became common, so this is a proven technology. And I did want to mention that we are using B&O funds from the crosswalk safety account to fund these. So we're spending about $100,000 a year on crosswalk safety, primarily on getting these done at the traffic signals. Just want to show off what our crew does, just a couple things. We do a lot of in-house fabrication. The upper left and upper left center, that is the interurban crossing Willis Street, so Willis and 74th. We've got the older non-compliant buttons on the left side and then the right side. You can see that we fabricated the buttons in the lower right picture. And we fabricate the extensions to put those buttons in the correct place to meet ADA in-house. So, our crew goes, they get the steel, they weld them together, paint them, and install those. Just a couple other things. The upper right and upper right center, putting in pedestrian push buttons in the right places. Sometimes we have to put in poles that are away from the signal pole, so those remote pole locations. And then another one I'm really proud of our team for, lower left, that is 64th and 212th. That's right across the street from Amazon. There's a bus stop right there that a lot of the Amazon employees use. And last year we put in some ped scale lights around that bus stop to make it more comfortable for them. However, putting in those ADA push buttons, a lot of times it puts those closer to traffic, and so occasionally they get hit. So in addition to putting in new ones, we're also replacing some of the ones that are kind of more out there in the traffic. But again, meeting ADA and getting those things to make our traffic signal system more accessible for people with it. All right, now let's move on to traffic signals and streetlights. Just a quick overview of our traffic signal system. We have 117 traffic signals. We have 12 flashing beacons. We have 44 school zone flashers. So all those elementary schools, we have 44 flashers in the city. We have 25 radar speed signs, 17 enhanced pedestrian crossings, for a total value of our signal system of around $60 to $70 million. Given the recent inflation over the last couple of years, that's probably 15% low by now. Just a quick map to give you an idea of where our signal system is. Traffic signals are the yellow dots. The enhanced crosswalks are the red triangles. You can see those primarily along Meeker Street and at the 4th and Willis roundabout, and then some other locations around the city, in front of the YMCA, places like that. Our radar speed signs are the blue boxes. Those are primarily in neighborhoods with a couple on places that I think there's some on Benson. Two we just added to James last year. The 44 school zone beacons are the green diamonds. And so you can see a pretty extensive system we have. Traffic signal maintenance and repair. So we spend about $240,000 a year maintaining traffic signals. This doesn't include replacing traffic signal cabinets or traffic signal poles or our uninterruptible power supplies, which we'll talk about later. This is just on parts to maintain the existing traffic signal system. Auto collisions, we spend about $60,000 a year repairing damage from crashes, as we'll see in a minute. And we have a few of those. Storm damage, we average around $40,000 in repairs the last couple of years. Knock on wood. The signal system has, we've been below that number. Believe it or not, a lot of times when there's a lightning storm, we get lightning damage. It'll hit a traffic signal, take that one out. If it's connected to a different traffic signal system or a different intersection with the old-fashioned copper wire, sometimes it'll jump intersections and take out 2 or 3 of them at a time. So. But we have the overall system is aging, so it does take a little bit more maintenance to keep it going. A couple things I want to point out: the pictures in the center or on the left side, those are actually bullet holes. So occasionally you have to do some of those repairs. Upper right, you can see the crew doing some signal head replacements, and then the lower right is just a picture of just some of the things that we come across. Our traffic signal poles. We have about 450 traffic signal poles for those 117 traffic signals. The steel poles have about a 50-year life cycle. Those are steel poles. They sit on concrete foundations. To replace one of those poles costs in the range of $80,000 to $90,000, and that is something that we need to hire a contractor for because we need somebody with a big crane that can actually take that pole out and put it back in. Currently in this city, we've identified 6 damaged poles that will need to be replaced at some time. We estimate that cost to replace those 6 at about $500,000. And those costs would include not only the construction, procurement of materials construction, but also the design and contract administration of that. So, and then just a couple pictures of, lower left, 64th and 228th, a truck ran into the signal pole. There's some other pictures, foundation damage in the top right. They are, I guess I would also like to point out that unlike our streetlight poles, our traffic signal poles are not designed to be breakaway. Those are designed to take a good hit. The thought there is that a signal pole with, the arms on it and the signal heads and things like that, if that got hit and got knocked over, the risk to the traveling public is greater than if it, withstood an impact. On the other hand, streetlights, they're a single pole. We designed those to be breakaway so that they get knocked over, they fall down, and that lower risk to the public because they're just a single pole. Again, 6 damaged poles. Left side is 4th and Meeker. Next one is 104th and 240th. So that's up near Fred Meyer and Taco Bell, excuse me. That 104th and 240th will actually be replaced by King County as part of the Metro Rapid Ride I-Line project. 60th and 228th, and then Central and 259th. And then there is, one second, one other signal pole, 272nd and Star Lake. So that will actually be replaced by Sound Transit as part of their traffic mitigation for the Federal Link Extension project. So out of the 6 damaged ones, 2 of those poles are going to be replaced by other projects. Span wire signals. So these are traffic signals that are actually hung by wires between poles at the corners of the intersection. We have 14 of these. These are typically installed to be temporary. These are places where we decided that we need a traffic signal, but we don't quite have the funding to go install the full meal deal of metal poles and metal arms. In today's cost, those are typically $700 to $1 million to install one of those, full traffic signal. So these are much more cost effective. However, again, they are meant to be temporary. We have 6 span wire signals on steel poles and 8 on timber poles. And of course, the steel poles are designed to last much longer than timber poles. And so several of those timber poles that we've got in these span wires are in need of replacement. So a couple pictures. The top picture is 132nd and 240th near the QFC. That's a timber span wire signal. That one's actually, those poles are actually in pretty good shape. And then the lower picture is 100 and 240th. That's East Hill Elementary right there in the picture. Those are on steel poles.
Hey, Molly, that's not you at the light, is it? Like your car at the light?
Running the light. Stop it. Maybe my car is.
So these do still have some issues. Unfortunately, about 2 months ago, we had a truck hit one of the, actually caught one of the wires and pulled it down. But our crew went out there and got it put back up in a couple hours, and everything went back to normal. So, traffic signal controllers. So again, we have 117 traffic signals. Each one of them has a traffic signal controller inside the box that operates a traffic signal. In the last 3 years, we've replaced 70 of those controllers. Our signal team, city staff, has replaced 39 of those, and another 31 of those were replaced by contract. Our last antique traffic signal controller was replaced late last year. This was actually part of the Kent School District, Kent Laboratory Academy in the old Panther Lake Elementary School there at 108th and 208th. That was our last antique controller. It was replaced. These controllers have a 20-year life cycle, so we need to replace on average about 6 per year. And then we also get some that are damaged by the auto accidents that we've talked about, and so last year we replaced 2 of those. Along with these, we have the signal cabinet upgrades, and 4 of the cabinets were replaced by signals last year. And one thing I did want to point out is by doing these life cycle costs and these upgrades and the work that our team has done to get these traffic signal controllers replaced over the last several years has actually done a really good job at reducing the number of after-hours callouts. So, find my numbers here. So in 2018, there were 37 after-hours callouts to our signal crew because of our older controllers. Last year, 2021, we were down to 11, so less than a third. So it is paying off. Just want to show you a picture of an antique traffic signal controller. We debated on this, but I find this fascinating. The controller on the left is an antique traffic signal controller. Believe it or not, it uses a motor, an actual electric motor, and gears and mechanical switches that move with levers and cams to actuate the traffic signal.
Wow.
By contrast, the modern controller on the right side is a very capable high-speed computer. Doesn't run on Windows, so it is very robust and stable. So, and can do many, many different things. These old ones, you could adjust cams and gears and things like that. You could program it to some degree. These new modern ones, absolutely amazing. Controller cabinet replacements, traffic signal controller cabinets. So the actual metal boxes that these sit in, they have a 25-year life cycle compared to the 20-year life cycle for the actual computers inside. We've currently replaced 46% of those. City crews have replaced 54 of our controller cabinets in the last 5 years, and we're scheduled to do 5 more this year. So these are life cycle replacement costs. In addition to those, we also end up replacing several traffic signal controller cabinets per year due to crashes. One picture I did want to highlight, right side in the center, this is 104th and 260th Street. This is right next to the Kentucky Fried Chicken. This was one of the traffic signal control cabinets. It was replaced in 2019, and last year somebody drove into it. So unfortunately, some of the things inside, some of the hardware inside was salvageable, but the majority of it had to be replaced. But again, these are on the side of the road, so it does happen. Uninterruptible power supplies. These are basically battery backups for our traffic signals. They have that amounts to large car batteries in them, usually about 3 of those. With the traffic signal displays, the lights, all using LED lights now, we can power our traffic signals for about 8 hours on battery power before they go dark, which is a huge improvement from when we used to have the old incandescent style light bulbs that went dark almost immediately. So we have these installed at 89 of the 117 intersections. We want to do 24 more, and there's a couple that we've decided that probably don't need the uninterruptible power supply. These have a 25-year life cycle like the cabinets. And so we'll need to replace on average 4 or 5 per year. But along with those comes batteries. So we have 306 batteries that we have to maintain. And the batteries last similar to a car. They last for about 5 years, so we spend about $15,000 a year now for battery replacements. But one nice thing about having these with the batteries, some of the storms that we've had in the recent years where we've had some of the intersections dark for a couple days, our crews can actually take the batteries and go swap them out so they can run the signal for 7 hours or so, bring some fresh batteries, keep the signal going, go back, take the batteries back to the shop, charge them back up. And so we've done that at a couple locations for several days. So big improvement for transportation there. Just a quick map showing the uninterruptible power supplies, locations, and the map's a little out of date. Apologize for that. There's actually 89. They're primarily the improvements for the additions have been up in the Panther Lake area. Traffic signal timing. We need to stay, from our perspective, we need to stay on top of the timing to keep the system efficient. Again, we have 117 traffic signals. They're on all of our major arterials. Keeping that timing adjusted for the fluctuating traffic conditions helps people move, reduces emissions, and basically generally keeps people happier. Our last major corridor retiming for our major corridors in the city was 2010. However, we have partnered with King County Metro for some of their transit corridors. We've got a partnership where they will go and do the traffic modeling for us to change the signal timing at those corridors, and then our side of it is that we go and implement it and then make those minor adjustments after it's implemented. Currently, we have 20 more signals that need to be controlled or connected to our central traffic control system, which is in Public Works across the street. And we estimate, again, to retime our major corridors is about $200,000. That is a project that's in the Transportation Master Plan to retime the traffic signals. Traffic signal communication. So our communication system consists of fiber optic communications as well as some of the old copper twisted wires. Our current network is about 132,000 feet long. To fully build it out and connect all of our systems together, we need about another 81,000 feet, which is somewhere to the $700,000 to $1 million range. What that does do when we get the system fully built out, though, is it also allows us to expand our traffic camera locations and also gives us the flexibility in the future to install more devices if we ever wanted to go with like overhead reader boards or some kind of an actuated message board or things like that. Having that communication system in place allows us to connect to that. Traffic cameras. We currently have 27 traffic monitoring cameras. At the bottom, we've got some lists of some potential new locations. We have 4 cameras purchased for Canyon Drive, so we'll be installing those soon. Other locations we're considering, James Street going up the hill, the 208th to 12th Street going up that hill, Reith Road going up that hill. A lot of these we've been working with Bill Thomas to identify locations we can install cameras that they can use for their weather response. So we're partnering on those things. Traffic loops. Traffic loops are critical to our signal operations. Our traffic signals operate on a kind of basically it's like a responsive operation where it defaults green to one direction, and when a car comes from one of the side streets, we need to detect that car to change the traffic signal. So we default the signals to the heavier or primary traffic movement. And to detect those cars, we use these inductive loops. They're basically upside-down metal detectors that are in the pavement surface. And so when a car drives over that sends the traffic controller a signal, which then triggers the traffic signal. For 117 traffic signals, we have over 4,000 loops. We have a $50,000 annual budget and it costs about $2,500 loops, so we're doing about 20 a year, but that doesn't include all the loops that get replaced as part of the overlay projects. So every time we pave through the intersection, obviously those get ground out and so those get replaced. Streetlight maintenance. Similar to our traffic signal controllers, we have an annual maintenance budget for streetlights. The city itself, we own about 2,700 streetlights, and the remainder are owned by Puget Sound Energy that we pay them to operate and maintain. So we have about 15 to 25 streetlights that are struck per year. The last couple of years, it's hovered right around 19 or 20 streetlights that get knocked down every year. And then our average annual cost to replace or stand up those streetlights is between $35,000 and $50,000. Just a couple pictures of some of the work that we've done. The picture on the left is Damian Jarger from our signal crew. Streetlight was actually knocked over so hard it damaged the foundation bolts. So this is a picture of Damian actually installing new bolts in the foundation. This is 104th and 235th, 108th and 235th, excuse me. That's not correct, it's 104th. Just north of McClendon's. It's one of the streetlights that have been out for a while, so we've got that one put back up. Bottom center, 277th Street, so 274th Way, under 108th. This is the kind of that half interchange type thing where the 277th corridor goes under 108th. I took a picture of this light. This light hasn't been working for about 4 years, and Jay from our crew went out and got that working the other day, so we're, great to have that working. Lower right, Meeker Street. The Meeker Street streetlights are very lovely streetlights. Unfortunately, the only place we can get those is Italy. So we ordered some in November, and they're supposed to ship sometime this month, so we're hoping to get those by the end of the summer. But we bought a couple extras, so we'll be ready for that. And then upper right corner, just some of the random things. This is 240th behind Lowe's. This is a dead-end street, and this is almost at the cul-de-sac. Somebody was driving down the road and just ran right into the, the service for the streetlights, just completely off the side of the road. So. Graffiti, you've probably heard enough about that. Our crew spent quite a bit of time removing graffiti. Luckily, our signal cabinets have a special coating and a cleaner, so it's reasonably easy to remove that. Streetlight poles, same thing, we're using goof off like most people. We do some tree trimming and brush cutting around our traffic signal system, streetlights and things like that to keep those accessible. Additional streetlights, I believe you've probably all seen this slide before. There's the city's adopted streetlight policy calls for, streetlights on all the arterial streets. So 70 miles of arterials in Kent, we have about 27.5 miles of arterials that do not have streetlights. Slowly making some inroads into these by having Puget Sound Energy install some streetlights or developments. When a new development comes in, it's on an arterial street. That's part of their frontage improvement is to put a streetlight or two in there. So current estimate is $15 to $20 million to complete the arterial streetlight, and when those additional streetlights would be added, that would be about an additional $130,000 a year for power, which is about 10% of what we pay now, about $1.3 million. Copper wire theft, still an ongoing issue. In 2021, it cost the city $50,000 to replace the copper wire theft. Some of the things that we're doing to try and deter that, we are welding the junction box lids. That is somewhat effectiveness, but with the ability for anybody to go to Home Depot and buy a battery-powered grinder to cut the lids off, it's not as much of a deterrent as it used to be. So now we've gone to replacing the copper wire, which has a high value, with aluminum wire, which has almost no value. You can see some of the methods we've gone to. Lower right, this is a barrier. Somebody took the plate off the barrier, so our guys put a piece of metal on there, put a piece of strut and bolted it in there to try and make it more deterrent. I did want to point out the center left picture. It says aluminum wire only now. This isn't something we typically do. This is one of our guys. This is Canyon Drive going up the hill. This streetlight pole is on the back of a retaining wall. You can see in the corner there the pedestrian rail. That's the sidewalk level. One of our crew got so frustrated with replacing wire at this location so many times that he wrote on there it's aluminum wire. So that gave us the idea we should probably look at getting some formal stickers with the city logo on it that say aluminum wire. So that's something we're working on. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I think we need to make that a little more formal.
Like the out-of-the-box thinking.
I do too.
Almost done. Decorative lighting. So get a couple installations of decorative lighting. We've got the two bridges. So Meeker Street under SR 167 and James Street under SR 167. That's the upper right picture. We've got decorative lighting at the roundabout. So those two pictures on the right. So the color lights, those are working out well. And then we showed a couple of the locations. We showed Meeker Street. We kind of consider that decorative lighting. It is full street lighting, but those are fancy poles. And then the lower left, that's actually the Cambridge neighborhood. That's an old lighting system from the 60s that our crew refurbished this year. So, I managed to reuse most of the parts even, so good news there. Transportation planning, transportation master plan. I'm sure you've all heard plenty of things about the transportation master plan. That was a major milestone in our transportation planning last year. That was adopted about a year ago. Just a couple pictures of the outreach that we did. This sets kind of the direction for transportation in Kent for the next 20 years. Very large project list. Along with this came the update to our transportation impact fees and our financially constrained plan. Which then feeds into, I'm going to skip ahead real quick and come back to that. So the Transportation Master Plan then feeds into the Transportation Improvement Program. So this is our short-term 6-year transportation program. This is much more financially constrained. I am showing the 22-27 update from last year because I wanted to show the slide or the picture on the right side. Usually we take off 4 or 5 projects and add 2 or 3 projects. Last year, because we adopted the Transportation Master Plan, there was a major overhaul to the Transportation Improvement Program. We had a much longer project list. We still had the 5 projects that came off being completed, But as you can see, we added somewhere in the range of 15 new projects to our TIP. And actually, Council, you will see the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program at the meeting on May 17th. That we'll be bringing that for public hearing and council consideration. So almost done. Last year I showed these slides or these pictures, and I wanted to show them again. These are volumes on the freeways. These three that I'll show are volumes on the freeways around the area. And so what we're looking at is these are the 3 years, 2020, 2021, 2022, compared to 2019. And so this shows the traffic volumes and the impacts from COVID. So first location is I-5 at Enchanted Parkway, so as close as we could get on I-5 to Kent. You can see in 2020, huge drop off right after the stay-at-home orders. Foot traffic volumes are down 50, 60%. Came back to somewhere in the range of down, 17, 18%. 2021, middle of 2021, last summer, when we were all getting out and about again. Still, down 5%, but getting close to normal. And then as 2021 into 2022, those volumes are still down 7, 8%. So I-5, in South County is still below what the volumes were in 2019. So next location is I-405 at 37th Avenue in Renton. So just past the 167 interchange. Similar story. Volumes dropped off. Maybe not quite as much as I-5. In 2020 started rebounding. Still down, at current times 7 or 8% over what they were pre-pandemic. And then we've got SR 167, freeway right through our own city. Our traffic volumes didn't drop off nearly as much. We saw, early on 40%, but those traffic volumes quickly went back up to the 10, 15% below average range in 2020. This is primarily because the people that use the Valley Freeway, people that live in Kent, people that work in Kent, those are people that don't have the ability to work remotely. Those are people that have to show up at their job and do their job. Those are also people that didn't want to take transit because they didn't want to sit on the train, they didn't want to sit on the bus, so they started driving again. So we can see that in the middle of 2021, that volume is 10, 12% above where it was pre-COVID, and then last summer with Omicron, volumes dropped back off to just a little bit below. But 2022, you can see we are once again somewhere in the 7 or 8% range above what those 2019 volumes are. So while the other freeways are, I-5 and 405 are getting close to what they were in 2019, 167 is already well over that, which is one of the reasons that we are very thrilled to be working with WashDOT on the SR 167 master plan update. So we think that's a very important document. Slight challenge there. The legislature approved a transportation package. As Chad mentioned, Kent did very well. Very excited about the money we got. However, we don't have the 167 project list yet, so we're going to have to wait until the next transportation program, or lobby for individual projects when that project list comes out, which that should be about a year from now, I think, is when they're planning on having the master plan done. And so there will be a project list. And April Delchamps, our former transportation planner, is leading that, and so we'll probably ask her to come back and give the council an update on that one. It's done. And, whoops, with that.
Are we done?
We are done.
Oh, okay. Didn't want to interrupt you. Hey, great presentation, man. It's amazing how much work that goes on in this city, with our roads. I mean, $2 billion worth of asset, I think of what I heard. That's incredible. And then all of the sustainability stuff they have to do. Kudos to the team. I mean, it's just a massive project. And like I said, the weather didn't make it any better this year. Probably create more opportunities for us. So, but good job and kudos to the team. This light's not working, so anybody have a comment? Madam Mayor, please.
Thank you, Council President. Two things. So the 167 master plan, the lack of the ability to get funding for projects because we had no plan, just really proud of the amount of push that we had from our Public Works folks to get that plan going so that we could actually do projects. Yep. So grateful for that and excited to see where it ends up. Then question on flashing yellow.
Yes.
So other than money, what is the criteria, other than having money to put them in? What's the criteria for where we put them?
So flashing yellow arrows, there are only a couple of criteria. You need to have adequate sight distance. So if you've got a road with a left turn on a curve, sometimes those aren't the best places to put those because you can't see far enough to judge the oncoming traffic. And then the other one is primarily a number of lanes that are coming at you as you're trying to make your left turn. So like 3 lanes is not a good place to put a flashing yellow arrow. I know Federal Way does it, but that's, federal guidelines is we should only do flashing yellow arrows where you have to turn across 1 lane or 2 lanes, not 3.
So how quickly you can get to the place where you're getting coffee in the morning could be a criteria?
We're working on a criteria. We try and install those when we go do signal upgrades. We try and install those because they do improve efficiency. They make people happy. We get lots of requests for those. And we've got a couple planned. It's something that our crews can do. It's a signal change, and now that we've got all our traffic signal controllers that can support those. It's only been the last year or two that, in fact, up on East Hill on Benson, only last year we've upgraded the signal controllers to actually, support that operation. So,
I know we'd originally had some grant money to do them around town. I think we had grant money to do them around town. So
in the valley, we did 31 in the valley 2 years ago.
Okay. Any other comments? Good job, team. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll take a break until 1 minute to 7. Okay.
A couple drone images there. The one on the left is kind of looking, in general, southeast, maybe a little bit more east, but that's April 2021 on the left and April 2022 on the bottom right. So you can see the massive change there in a course of a year worth of construction. So, yeah, again,